Pink house, purple polka dots. That's what I want.
Well, do you live in an HOA? Because you might not be able to do that.
Uh-oh.
Today we're going to dive into what you can and maybe can't do within an HOA and how some of the rules may not be enforceable.
Ah, that's good to know. And there are still some properties that don't have HOAs, so let's always keep that in mind. We've been living here in South Orange County for over 20 years, and we're going to take you along this ride on HOAs and how they may impact you. I'm Vickie.
And I'm Jim, and we're with the Bishop team, your leading realtors here in Orange County, California.
Come along for HOA news. So let's start from the beginning. Tell me, what is an HOA? What does it stand for, and then what is it?
So Homeowners Association is what it means.
Okay.
And it's generally, at least in California, it's a corporation. It's under the Franchise Tax Board, so we'll get into some of the rules relative to that and why it's important and when you can maybe take advantage of it. And also the rules and regulations, the CC&Rs.
CC&Rs are covenants, conditions, and restrictions.
Basically the rules under which you live. There are also architectural guidelines, rules and regulations, things like that, depending on your HOA. That's the main document that you're agreeing to live under when you buy a home with a homeowners association.
And each area has different CC&Rs, right?
Correct. So the main part today is what things might be unenforceable within all those rules that you agreed to live under,
right,
or are reviewing when looking to buy a home. Some of these rules may not be enforceable. So a recent law in California enacted, unfortunately, there's still some CC&Rs that have racist language in it.
Wow.
People of color cannot buy a house in X neighborhood.
Wow, is this 2023?
Yes, these are generally older, much older neighborhoods.
Wow.
In remote areas, but some of that is still in their CC&Rs. So the state enacted a law which basically pushes it down to the county to clean up the rules and regulations. They redact the documents, re-record them. It doesn't require the same vote to change CC&Rs.
Sure.
For obvious reasons.
Yeah,
so
they got to get that cleaned up and fixed.
Other cases can be sometimes HOAs might ban solar panels.
Right.
Accessory dwelling units, ADUs, clotheslines, satellite dishes. They might say you have to water your lawn every day.
So just like the solar panels, things have changed with accessory dwelling units or another unit on your property, right?
So basically what happened is the laws changed at the state level. Because of the housing crisis in California, they said you can build an accessory dwelling unit, an ADU. And if you want more information about that specifically, there's a link in our to another video we did about that. But basically the law changed, so that then overrode some of the HOA restrictions and the city and the county restrictions that said you couldn't do certain things that now you can. Federal, state, and even local laws can supersede HOA rules and say, no, you can't enforce that. Conversely, you might have a limit that's set by the state, and HOA can be more restrictive. For example, clearing your home for fire safety. The state might say you've got to be within 100 feet of a dwelling, and the HOA could say, no, you got to be 150 feet from the dwelling. So it works both ways.
So how do they decide who supersedes who? Because in some cases, the government is superseding, and in some cases, the HOA is superseding.
The HOA said you have to clear within 50 feet of your house, but the state said you have to clear within 100. Then the law supersedes the HOA rule in that scenario. Okay. Could that be challenged in court because the law is less? Yes, but in a lot of cases, the HOA rules are more restrictive than the law. For example, in the state of California, you can paint your house any color you want, but if you live in certain neighborhoods of Irvine, you can only paint your house a color that's on the approved palette, so that's more restrictive. When is an HOA rule illegal, so to speak? In some cases, if they infringe upon your First Amendment rights.
Okay.
It's been ruled that you can place political signs on your property, But some HOAs will dictate where you can place them. They might put size limits on it. You can't put a 50-foot by 100-foot sign. Another thing that HOAs can't do or would have their rules determined to be illegal would be if they restrict certain things relative to freedom of religion. So another example that would apply where the federal law is less restrictive than the state law that might be okay within the HOA is discrimination based on protected classes. There are many more protected classes in California than at the federal level, and if so, an HOA might say, you can't do construction on the outside of your house to accommodate a ramp for someone in a wheelchair. There's different laws that would come in and say, that's discrimination. The HOA rules are null and void for that specific thing.
Now, what about selective enforcement? Like, so-and-so can do one thing, but the guy across the street can't do it. And why does that happen?
That could be potentially selective enforcement. If there's a rule in the HOAs that says you can't do this, but then someone is allowed to do it and you're fined for it and they're not, that could be a selective enforcement. So that's when you might need to talk to a real estate attorney to see if there's damages or if it's unenforceable. We've seen situations where you can't do this with your back fence, and then somebody does it, and then you come to find out, they got on the board, they got their buddies to approve it, and then they got off the board, and boom, now it's done. So. Really a slippery slope. It
is a slippery slope.
Another scenario that's unique but creates a situation where the HOA cannot enforce a fine and actually can't enter a contract is if the HOA has their status suspended with the Franchise Tax Board, they are not a legal entity. They're on hold. What does that mean? They can't enforce a fine. They can't fine you for a violation. They can't sign a contract with their gardener. Those contracts, contracts are
huge because there's a lot of common land.
So you can go online and see if your HOA is suspended or not. And if you get a fine and they're suspended, you could fight that and probably win because it's not enforceable.
So if I'm buying a house, I'm thinking I should probably check on the status of the HOA to see, that it's viable and in good standing.
So absolutely. Part of the seller required disclosures are the homeowner HOA documents. And that's not just the CC&Rs, which you can generally find online. 12 months minutes, the budget, and all of that. You can also go online and check the status through the FTB, Franchise Tax Board, and definitely want to read those rules and all the guidelines so that you know the rules under which you're living. And also check out the financial stability of the HOA. Another scenario that may be deemed not enforceable is if the HOA gets a complaint from a neighbor.
The good old neighbor,
nosy neighbor complains, and if they find you without verifying whether you actually violated the rule, then that fine might not stand up either.
Good point.
Another situation that can come into play, it's kind of like the executive order that comes out of the White House. It hasn't passed Congress, so it's not a law, so it may or may not be enforceable. Same thing is if the board passes something that's in conflict with the CC&Rs and without getting the vote of the members, that might not be kosher.
So tell me, what exactly should I do when I think that something is not enforceable? Where do I go? What's my first source here?
Remember that the board, they're your neighbors. So the first thing would be to talk to them and say, hey, I'm not sure about this. It helps greatly if you have the paragraph of the CC&Rs that you're referencing, have backup documentation, anything that can help them be educated, because they might not know about the rules as well as you've researched. So start with that. If that doesn't work, then you have to look at, is it violating a law? You might have to take it up with legal authorities, and that could be local, federal, state, whatever. So depending on what the rule is, would dictate where you go.
Where can I get my CC&Rs?
If you're buying a home, you're going to get them through escrow. It's a required seller disclosure. If you already live there, a lot of times you can log into your property management HOA portal, and more of them are posting there, which is great because it's just a big PDF. You can go online and search. A lot of them now are searchable. If you don't have any luck with that, we can get them through our title company because they are recorded against the property. So we go to the county recorder and pull that down and can email that to you.
Sweet. So rest assured, there is a way that you can definitely get it.
Yeah. So any
if you
questions?
hunt and peck, you can't find it, call us. Okay, so I went through all the documents, I read them, I decided, great, I'm buying the property, now I own it. Can the HOA change the rules after I buy the property?
Just to be sure, yes, they can. And we talked about how earlier,
right?
But the rules could change after you live there.
So if they can change after I live there, can they change without a vote?
In some cases, yes. It depends on how the HOA documents are written. Here's an example. Federal law changes. The HOA tries to change the CC&Rs to comply with the law, but they don't get the vote. So you still have these rules that don't really apply.
Sure,
so
which we kind of discussed earlier, so I'm understanding.
In that case, the board has to make the decision not to enforce that rule. And part of it is, one, because it's now illegal, and two, if they enforced it, they could be sued, and their job is not to lose money for the HOA. So hopefully this cleared up some of the questions about, when can an HOA not enforce rules, or can you fight a fine, things like that.
First and foremost, please find out who's on your board, go next door, have a chat, bring that milk and cookies. If that doesn't work,
you can go to a meeting, whether it's in person or on Zoom, and ask the question. You can a lot of times email the property manager, and they can either, if they know the answer, send you a response, or go to the board and get a response back to you.
We've dealt with hundreds of HOAs, different boards, different CC&Rs. We know a lot about them. If you have any questions or if this was confusing, please give us a call. We'd be honored to chat with you in specifics about your HOA and what's going on, and dig deeper if we need to, if you're having some type of a problem or some type of a question. We're here for you. We've been in Orange County a very long time. I hate to say it because we're getting a little bit old, but we are here for you, and we know how to deal with this stuff. I'm Vicki.
And I'm Jim, and we're with the Bishop team, your leading realtors here in Orange County, California.
You guys go have a great day.